Hi, I'm Rusty Komori, and this is Beyond the Lines on ThinkTech Hawaii. I was the head coach of the Punahou boys varsity tennis team for 22 years, and we were fortunate to win 22 consecutive state championships. My books, Beyond the Lines and Beyond the Game, are about leadership, character, and creating a superior culture of excellence, which is what this show is all about. My special guest today is the highly respected and very successful leader of Asset School here in Hawaii. He is head of school Ryan Masa, and today we are going beyond great minds. Hey, Ryan, welcome to Beyond the Lines.
Hey, Rusty, thanks for having me.
Now, it was so good meeting and talking with you last week on your high school campus. I mean, you guys have such a beautiful, peaceful, relaxing campus. I just absolutely love it. And I want to ask you first, Ryan, if you can tell me a bit about your background.
Sure. So it was great having you out last week, by the way. I was really happy to show you around. But in terms of me, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So as I was telling you last week, big Browns, Indians, Cavs, Ohio State fan. And so grew up there. And after college, I was able to get a job at a school called Lawrence School. And it's funny how life comes full circle because, Assets wasn't a gleam in my eye, but, that was a school that was specifically for kids who learn differently. Also had two campuses. And so there were a lot of similarities that I would find many years later at Assets. But I really adored that school. I was a high school social studies teacher. I taught psychology, economics, history. It was great. And what I really fell in love with was the mission of the school and the idea of serving kids who learn differently, and helping them thrive. And that was incredibly rewarding. And so after doing that for a handful of years, and I had done some administrative work as well during my time there, in addition to coaching, which was also fun. It was sort of a classic independent school story where you're doing everything, right? You're coaching, you're teaching, you're doing some admin work. It was great. But because of who we serve and how interesting their learning profiles are, I thought it would be wise to go back to graduate school and really study, have a better, deeper understanding of who they are and how they learn. And so at that point, I went to graduate school, and then from graduate school out to Hawaii.
So, Ryan, you didn't just go to graduate school, you got your master's at Harvard. I mean, that is impressive. And I want to know, what did you get your master's in, and how has that helped you on your life's journey so far in helping people?
Yeah, so the program at Harvard was called Mind, Brain, and Education, and it was really appealing to me because it was a relatively new field, and what it was trying to do was say we have all of these challenges and opportunities in education, but it's really hard to solve them or move the ball forward in silos. And so instead of tackling things like early childhood or learning to read or any number of issues um, by one discipline, let's look at it through an interdisciplinary lens. So it really focused on education, neurobiology, and cognitive science working together to examine some of these issues about how we learn and how we feel, and the impact and the interrelation between learning and feeling, right? So it was a great program, loved it. Met my wife there as well, so that was obviously the best part of the program. And then in terms of how it's helped me, I mean, I think it certainly has helped me better understand how people learn, and in turn how I approach um, work with faculty around teaching and learning for our kids. But I would say even for with adults, I mean, I think one of the really cool things about the program is how, learning, sometimes we think about learning just within K-12 education, but learning doesn't stop there, right? And so, there's this whole thing called adult development. Um, I won't go into too much detail, but if you think about it, right, like think about how many developmental periods we have for kids. We have, you know, prenatal and early childhood, and then sort of early adolescence and later adolescence, and all of these developmental periods between when you turn 18, but then after that, it's like 18 to 85 is just called adult, right? And that's not really how it is, right? There's a development that happens throughout your lifespan. So I think, my work with others that it also really informed how we learn and what's important to us at different parts of our life. And anyways, it's endlessly fascinating about how we learn and how we feel and how we feel to learn.
No, you're so right about that. I totally agree with you. And before joining Assets, what are some organizations that you have helped?
Well, I was really lucky, fortunate when I first got here to Hawaii. I was working with the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools, which I think is a great organization there. Hawaii has a really vibrant, independent private school community. There's over 100 private schools in the state, which is pretty remarkable for a state our size. And so I was able to work with them and learn a lot about the private schools in our state and all the good work and different missions that they are embarking on. I also worked with a group that was trying to open a charter school on the windward side, which is now up and running, which I'm really proud of. It's called Malamahunua Charter School, and it was founded in conjunction with Hokulea's worldwide voyage of the same name, Malamahunua, and the idea of caring for the earth and how living well on an island, living well on a canoe, the values translate to living well um, at our school community, in our state, and in our world. And so that was a real honor and privilege to work with that group over a couple of years to um, get the school up and running. And it's obviously done remarkably well, way past since I was involved with it. I stayed on as a board member for a couple of years afterwards. And they've done a great job, I think, of showing us how the community can be your classroom and how we learn from the mo'olelo of our place and from the kupuna in our communities. So we have multiple teachers, not just the teacher in the classroom, and it really redefines what a classroom is. So the classroom could be, the lo'i, it can be the garden, it can be, all these sort of amazing learning sites on the windward side. So I did that for a little bit. I also was involved, served as president for a little bit with the International Dyslexia Association, which has a Hawaii branch, and they do tremendous work on behalf of adults and children who are dyslexic and their families as well. And there are many international branches, and I would say Hawaii's has always been one of the strongest, just because of the advocacy work and the public awareness work. And they really try hard to um, tackle or address dyslexia from multiple angles. It's really, they do a lot of engagement, much more than some of the other branches. So I was really proud and honored to do that work as well.
No, I love the impact that you've been making in our community, and you've been at Assets now for around 7 years as the head of school. And can you tell me about the uniqueness of Assets School?
Sure. My time. This is my second year as head. I was the K through 8 principal prior to that. But Assets is unique in that there really isn't another school in the Pacific that has the mission that we have, which is to serve bright and capable kids. And we really specialize in those who are gifted and those who have learning differences. And a lot of our kids have uh, what we would call, they are who we would call twice exceptional, meaning that they're gifted, um, but maybe also dyslexic. They're gifted, but they struggle in math. And so, one of the important things to understand about learning differences is that it has nothing to do with your intellect. These kids and these adults are incredibly bright, like I said, often gifted. It's just that they struggle with their learning how to read or learning how to spell or writing um, longer responses. So to be able to work with them, because what often happens, Rusty, is that these kids in more traditional settings really struggle and they're not fully understood or appreciated, which is really um, it's really it's really too bad because they have infinite potential and they often draw inaccurate conclusions about themselves because their school experience hasn't been overly successful. And so at Assets to be able to turn that around for the child, but also the family, because when a child learns differently, the whole family goes on that journey. So often when your child struggles, parents are wearing that stress. They become the homework police. They're not trained in how to teach kids who learn differently how to do this kind of work, right? And so it just sort of builds on top of each other. And so to be able to have a child succeed and thrive, and then have the parents also feel that and allow them to go back to being mom or dad or auntie and uncle or grandma and grandpa, and not this sort of other, school role that becomes really junk. That's a great thrill and honor as well.
So, Ryan, why are your teachers having success in really helping your students excel?
So, I mean, we do a lot of training here at this. There's a lot of reasons. I mean, they're just wonderful. I mean, teachers are, I think, hopefully, if there's one thing we've taken out of the pandemic, is the value and the role that teachers play in society. They are absolutely heroes, and our teachers are the best. And so, why they have success where others maybe have not, a couple of things. I mean, one is they're highly trained. A lot of that is happening at Assets. You know, the good news about learning differences is that in addition to kids thinking about the world and problems differently and having unique and novel solutions, is that we actually know a lot about them, and we know which instructional practices and methods often work well for them. And so we try to put those tools in our teachers' toolboxes. And then I would say the other thing is environmental, which is, there are really great teachers at every school on the island and in the state and in the country. But to be able to have a school specifically for those kids, we're able to really structure the environment to set them up for success, and really meet them where they are and grow from there. And so we try to embed a lot of things into the environment. We often talk about the environment being the third teacher, because classes often have two teachers in them already. And so I think, that focus on not just how do we help you learn to read, but also how do we help you better understand yourself and your learning profile? Because one of the main goals of the school is for these kids who are gifted and who are dyslexic or whatever to advocate for themselves, because eventually they will leave us, whether that's at at college or whether it's at a different grade level. They will leave us and they will have to advocate for themselves. But you can't advocate for yourself if you don't first understand and accept yourself, right? So much of the school is focused on not just the academic skills, but the social emotional skills that kids need, which again, I would say is elevated from if they have come from a school experience before where it hasn't been successful. And maybe there's not a lot of trust right now in teachers or peers. And so we know that we have a lot of social emotional work to do with kids as well. We really see, it's sort of cliched because everybody talks about the whole child, but I think at Assets, we really live it. We really see the child's intellectual, social, emotional, behavioral, ethical lives and value all of them.
Oh, and Ryan, I like that you guys have rolling admissions and you have two campuses, and this year is your 65th anniversary. How awesome is that?
It's great. I mean, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, it's been obviously it's been a difficult year in so many ways, but it's to be able to celebrate 65 years this year has been a real joy. The school started 65 years ago on base over at Pearl Harbor, Hickam, and it was in, my understanding is old barracks, and it's really grown from there. And we have two campuses now. We have one by the airport, still by Pearl Harbor, and then we have our high school up at Aleva Heights. And so two great campuses that meet the needs of the kids that go there. So it's been a lot of fun looking at old yearbooks and pictures this year and seeing things from the past 65 years.
Yeah, for sure. And Ryan, you have my books, both of them. And what stood out to you in my books?
Yeah, thank you. I do have your books through a wonderful donation by one of our board members, Simon Tracy and his wife, Moko Tracy, two lovely people. So these are gifts that we are giving to the juniors and seniors. I think For me, when I think about leadership, and I know you have a chapter in it on it in your first book, it's on courage. I think um, other people have said this much better, but courage is sort of the virtue that allows all other virtues to exist, um, because courage allows you to act in ways, even in the face of risk and fear, to do what you think is necessary. So I know you have. I recall that I think you start that chapter with a quote from Bethany Hamilton, and I've heard that in different ways that courage isn't the absence of fear; it's fear walking, and I think that resonates to me as a school leader, that we have to not just tell the truth and be kind and be fair, but really do what we think is right in situations where all the information isn't clear and at risk, whatever risk means, whether that's somebody not being happy with the decision, whether it's um, knowing that there's going to be some fallout from the parent community or the student community or the faculty community, but um, ultimately, putting kind of aligning our head and our heart, and then making sure our hands and feet know what to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, courage. It's huge. I mean, courage and conviction. That's the chapter you're talking about. And you know what I like about your school, Ryan, is about the flag. I mean, you have various students daily raising the flag on your campus. Why is that important?
Yeah, so that's a tradition that predates me. I think it goes back all the way to our Pearl Harbor days. The school's always had a really close connection with the military, and um, has always viewed, I think, has always really appreciated that time and that tradition. And so you're right, it rotates throughout the homerooms at the K-8 campus, and there is a flag raising every day. The students are responsible for both the national and state flags. They are kept in the office. Students go and get them. They raise them. At the end of the day, they take them down. They fold them. They return them to the office. And so it's a great way for teachers to work with their students on understanding why that is important. And why do some days do we fly it at half mast? And why does the light have to be? I mean, sort of all of the protocol that goes around with flag raising. And obviously not this year because of COVID, but in previous years we have weekly assemblies in person, and we've often invited um, guests, oftentimes parents who are in the military, to come and do a demonstration for us and share with us how it's done. But it's really neat, especially with the youngest kids, because when they get older, it tends to be one or two people will go from the class, but when they're smaller, the whole class goes, right? And it's a whole class activity of learning how to do that and helping, right? So that flag doesn't touch the ground. And it is a really neat part of our school day.
And Ryan, robotics is really popular in our state, and your robotics team finished second in the state. I mean, they are brilliant. Why is your robotics team successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think because they're brilliant. I mean, I think that like we were saying at the beginning. I mean, learning differences has nothing to do with your intelligence, and we have a school full of gifted kids and intellectually advanced kids and curious kids, and um, they do think differently, and that some people will tell you that can be a great benefit to them, that they approach things in novel ways. So we started robotics a couple years ago. I need to give credit to our robotics teacher, Peter Hahn, because he's really done amazing work. Um, and it started off as sort of like we have a mentorship class on Wednesdays, and it started off, I think, in there. And then, it was one group of kids, and it quickly grew. And now there's 4 teams. We have 4 different teams that compete, and Peter finds a way to schedule all of their times. And it's really cool. It's really cool. I think one of the things that the school prides itself on, being a relatively small school, is that we want to make sure kids have different opportunities to really flex their muscles and find their gifts and their strengths and develop those, right? So some of those are in sports, some of those are in drama, or music or art, and some of them are in the more traditional sciences like robotics. And so for these, and then you've got kids who have multiple gifts, and who, they're gonna, play piano and, act in the play, and they're still gonna be in robotics, right? So it's not like you have to choose, but it is a really great way for them to um, work with their hands, get creative, solve problems. It really sort of up our alley in terms of how we approach school in general.
No, and that's so great. And Ryan, Queens Hospital did a $5,000 donation to your school. Was that connected through robotics somehow?
It was. So we had, if you can remember back to April, May, June of 2020, so a few months into the pandemic, we had three high school students who were trying to help the pandemic response. And so their idea was, pardon me, they were in robotics, and they thought we could build a robot that would allow nurses and physicians to deliver items to COVID patients in a contactless way. That way, doctors and nurses wouldn't necessarily have to go into patients' rooms. And so they built this robot that would do that. And so, you know, instead of just stopping there, we helped them reach out to Queens, and they wanted to donate this robot to the hospital. And I think so. We're super proud of the fact that they had the, you know, yeah, it was great that they could figure out how to do that. That's a nice engineering feat. I think we were more proud of the thoughtfulness behind it and the fact that they wanted to help the community. I think that that's the piece of really using your intellect for the benefit of others that we're super proud of. And then Queen's response was really, really wonderful and generous. And they, said, absolutely, we would accept this, gift. And why don't you come down, bring your parents, and we'll have a little kind of ceremony. And then we were surprised at that little ceremony that they presented us this check to use for the robotics program. And so they have been just wonderful partners. We have a TV show coming up, and Queens is the title sponsor for that TV show as well. And they just really get what we're trying to do here, not just about valuing kids who learn differently, but also the idea that we're going to need people who think outside the box and who think really creatively moving forward, like I said, to solve all of our issues, whether it's healthcare or not. So I can't say enough good things about those three kids, our robotics teacher again, and Queens.
No, I love hearing that, Ryan. And your team also built a Wally robot that I was able to see when I visited your campus, and they also shared it, took it to the lower campus. How awesome is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool. I mean, again, it's such a good example of them being creative and sort of tinkering and figuring things out. And that was what they ended up creating as sort of a side project. And it is super cool. And then bringing it down here, I mean, I think, because we are on two campuses, it's one of the things that we have to be more intentional about. It's not like, some other places where you share a campus, and so the high schoolers can always just come down and grab lunch with the little guys or do something like that. So we're always looking for opportunities where we can connect and make sure that we have some of that interaction between the youngest and the oldest. So the fact that they were able to bring it down, and of course the little guys loved it. They thought it was the coolest thing, right? And so they instantly ran to it, and just I think it blew their mind that there was this robot that could do these things, and it was Wale. And anyway, so it was a really neat moment.
Oh, and Ryan, you also showed me the painting wall, and tell me more about what the painting wall is.
So yeah, so that's on our high school campus, and it's outside of our art room, and we have a wonderful art teacher, Mark Maresca, and he's also a professional artist himself. And I think what's really great about Mark that is reflective of how we approach teaching and learning at all levels is that, he really focuses on where kids are at and what they want to learn about and helping them develop those skills. And so one thing is he has this mural wall outside of his class that kids sign up for, and they choose something that they want to, paint a mural of, and then they work on it for several weeks. And then it lives on our campus for several more weeks. And then eventually he'll whitewash it and we'll start again. And so, over the course of the year, maybe there'll be 2 or 3 maybe four, depending on time frame, on different murals. And they're all beautiful, and they're all an expression of sort of where kids, they're all different, because some kids want to paint, something that's really sort of comic based, and other kids want to paint something that's more impressionistic, or realistic. And so I love watching them do it, but I also am always intrigued by what it's going to be this time around, because it really reflects who the kids are in the class at that moment.
No, I love seeing that. That was actually, I mean, really beautiful. And Ryan, I want to ask you about leadership. Why are you a successful leader at Assets?
That's a good question. I always hesitate to, it's always uncomfortable to talk about yourself. I think what I feel comfortable saying is, I would start by saying I love the mission. I think that if, the leader of any organization or team has to sort of live and breathe the mission, it can't be forced, it can't be manufactured. And so I couldn't be more proud um, of Asset School's mission, and what it's trying to accomplish. And so I think that even when I don't necessarily have all of the answers, or um, um, not sure what to do, it's the North Star that I need. And if nothing else, I think what tends to come through is my love and care, and um, uh, for the school and for the mission. And then I think one of the things I've learned in leadership is how we manage change, and sort of respecting the process of change, but also respecting the individuals who are undertaking the change, right? So you want people to be, you don't want change to happen onto people. You want people to be part of the change, and understanding that things that I may have come to a conclusion of, or others may have come to a conclusion of, if we're deciding something, it may have taken us 2 weeks, 2 months, maybe even 2 years to come to that decision. Um, and certainly you have to allow people more than 2 minutes to understand that and accept that and make new meaning out of it. Because I think that um, when you lead change well, what you're really doing is helping people make new meaning out of what's happening. And so you have to, I think, really view it as such, and value it and respect it that way.
No, that's so good to hear. And Ryan, I also know that you were standing in the rain, welcoming or helping students and their families leave the campus. I mean that says a lot about you as a leader, really connecting with these families. How important is that to you?
It's, well, yeah. I mean, what you don't see in that picture is that there are many other people in the rain, right? So there's lots of people rolling up their pants and getting their feet wet and trying to hold umbrellas for kids, because I think that's the culture that we've created here at the school. But I mean, my favorite parts of the day are morning drop off and afternoon dismissal. I don't get out there as much now as head of school as I used to as principal, but they are wonderful times to be with kids and faculty, and like you said, connect. And I think, just as you write in your book, you have to be able to walk the talk. So what we say, what we do, and what we say we do have to be the same three things. And we want a culture where kids and families feel welcomed and respected. And so that means greeting them in the morning and opening the door for them in the afternoon. And when it's raining out, not hiding behind something else, and letting them get wet. It's getting wet and helping them stay dry. So um, yeah, I, don't- I think anybody at our school would have, was doing the same thing.
No, I love that, Ryan, and I love hearing you say that. And now I really know why you're having some really great success at Assets. And Ryan, I want to thank you for taking time to be on the show today.
Oh, thanks, Rusty. No, it's been a real pleasure getting to know you, and we appreciate the books. And thank you for giving me this time to share a little bit about Assets and who we serve and what we're doing.
Uh, that's awesome. Thank you, Ryan.
Bye-bye.
And thank you for watching Beyond the Lines on ThinkTech Hawaii. For more information, please visit rustykomori.com, and my books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I hope that Ryan and I will inspire you to create your own superior culture of excellence and to find your greatness and help others find theirs. Aloha.